My name's Liezl Fos, and I'm excited to be your guest speaker today. I have the privilege of working as a data steward for the NIH HEAL Initiative, and I'm based at the Renaissance Computing Institute at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm eager to present the FAIR principles as well as the roadmap, which is a guide designed to help researchers and investigators, like many of you, effectively apply the FAIR principles in your work and exploring its impact on the research community. So let's get started. So the objectives for today are as follows. First, I'll go over the FAIR principles. Second, I'll provide a roadmap that you can use to align with these principles. Third, I'll highlight how the NIH HEAL Initiative implements the FAIR principles. And finally, if time allows, we will conclude the session with a Q&A where I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. So without further ado, let's dive in with the first objective. So what is FAIR? Scientific Data published FAIR Guiding Principles for Scientific Data Management and Stewardship in 2016 to provide guidelines to improve the findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability of digital assets. I'd like to reiterate that implementing the FAIR principles focuses on data findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability of digital assets. And it does not necessarily mean free or open access for anyone. There are nuances to data sharing, and there are certainly controlled access options available when it comes to sharing your data. Data can still be fair while still being protected or subject to access restrictions based on ethical, legal, or privacy concerns. This call to action to make data fair will be able to improve data accessibility in order for the scientific community to move forward in translating discoveries into solutions. And to further accentuate the importance of the FAIR principles, an article published in 2020 titled Availability of Research Data in High-Impact Addiction Journals with Data Sharing Policy noted that although data sharing is one of the primary measures proposed to improve the integrity and quality of published research, studies show that it remains the exception and not the rule. So I'd like to share the results of this article as it provides a good example of an unfair data landscape. So in this study, researchers investigated data availability in high-impact addiction journals by focusing on 13 journals with data sharing policies. They analyzed a total of 130 research reports, which included the first 10 original research reports with empirical data from the most recent complete issue of each of the 13 journals. And the study specifically searched for references to data availability and formal data sharing statements within these reports. The results showed that only 8 of the 130 papers contained a data sharing statement, and only 1 provided a direct link to the analyzed data. So as you can see, this shows that data sharing was rare in the 13 high-impact addiction journals reviewed. In addiction research, the nature of the data reported might partially account for this limitation. However, it's crucial to stress that data sharing is a process that can enhance the quality, integrity of published research. However, this appears to be the exception and not the rule. So let's take a deeper dive at each of the FAIR principles, starting with the principle of data findability. First, let's consider a challenge that we often face. The ability to reuse data is limited by our capacity to find it. If researchers can't determine whether certain data has been collected or where it resides, then any subsequent steps become irrelevant. And so this is where metadata comes into play, and we'll delve deeper into this topic later in the presentation. By providing information such as we collected variables X, Y, and Z from populations P using method M, we can help both humans and machines to identify available data. It's essential that data and metadata be findable by humans and machines. One way to achieve this is by depositing your data into a repository, making it easier for others to discover and utilize your valuable data in their research. Again, I'd like to emphasize the importance of depositing your data in a repository, as this enables other researchers to discover and access your data. Repositories usually assign unique, persistent identifiers for datasets, allowing them to be cited when reused. And there are different ways that repositories can describe datasets. There's structured ways, semi-structured ways, or fully unstructured ways, where you're able to filter out results either by primary site, disease type, and demographic information. And in semi-structured descriptions, you can filter by different categories, and unstructured descriptions might involve a free text where you have to do a little bit more digging. But all these methods can be indexed by search engines, improving findability. And repositories can also provide curatorial assistance in describing your data with standardized vocabulary, further enhancing findability. They may allow you to protect your data via controlled access options or create metadata records for data that isn't available online. These processes work well for images, non-text data, and alphanumeric data alike. So to sum up, the F in FAIR principles highlight the significance of data findability. And with that covered, let's proceed to the next principle, which is data accessibility. So in scientific research, valuable data is often lost due to a lack of accessibility. Data may not be properly archived, lost due to technical issues or natural disasters, or simply be difficult to locate on a hard drive. In some cases, data may be technically accessible, but only after navigating a complex chain of communication with busy professors and postdocs. So to avoid this, it's important to ensure that your data is in a widely accepted format that can be read by anyone with a computer and internet connection, while minimizing the use of expensive or proprietary software. Access and authorization to the data should also be clearly defined, and metadata associated with the data should provide exact conditions under which it can be accessed. Finally, selecting a repository that best fits the data type is crucial to ensure accessibility. By following these guidelines, we can ensure that valuable scientific data is not lost and remains accessible to future researchers. And in order to ensure that your valuable scientific data is accessible for reuse, it's important to select a repository that is best fit for your data type. This will allow other researchers to gain access to your data and use it for their own research purposes. There are two main types of repositories. There's controlled and open access. Controlled access repositories are necessary for certain data types, especially those that contain sensitive data information, while others may require excision or aggregation of sensitive data prior to placement in a repository. So remember, the FAIR principles stress the importance of data accessibility. And in addition to data accessibility, the next FAIR principle emphasizes data interoperability. This entails ensuring that your data is in a widely accepted format and can be accessed easily. Additionally, the metadata associated with the data should clearly specify the conditions for accessing the data. And so the next principle is data interoperability. And interoperability is a crucial aspect of making data fair. Data is typically collected for a specific purpose and can be heavily customized for that purpose. One way to make your data more interoperable is by using common data elements, also known as CDEs, which are standardized instruments or measures employed by studies to collect data. CDEs are published and often validated through peer-reviewed research as effective ways to gather data. In addition to using CDEs, submitting a data dictionary along with your data can enhance its interoperability, so other researchers who may not be familiar with the processes that you used are able to transform your data set. A data dictionary also helps other researchers understand the landscape of your data set and provides information on transforming your data into standard formats. And this ultimately allows your data to be harmonized with other data sets for reuse. And when a new researcher refers to your work, they may be able to search for and use the same variable names across multiple studies. Data interoperability often requires integrating the data with other data sets for applications, workflows for analysis, storage, and processing. And to ensure data interoperability, use standard vocabularies and ontologies, especially standardized instruments and measures, such as CDEs, should be incorporated during the study planning phase. Data formatting is also important for interoperability, and using widely accepted formats such as JSON, CSV, JPEG can facilitate reuse. Ensuring dataset interoperability requires adopting the perspective of a data user rather than a data generator. Data curators or data stewards, such as myself, can offer valuable insights from this perspective. So to recap, we've gone over the importance of data findability, accessibility, and interoperability. And the last but certainly not least FAIR principle is data reusability. The ultimate goal of FAIR is to optimize the reuse of data and enhance knowledge by ensuring that metadata and data are well described and can be replicated and combined in various settings. Essentially, the more accessible and reusable the data are, the greater their potential impact on advancing research. A way to measure a dataset's fairness is to assess the number of researchers who can reuse it. The more accessible the dataset is, the more researchers can use it to explore new research questions, replicate findings, or build upon existing research. However, it's not just about the quantity of researchers who can reuse the data, but also the quality of reuse. The effort required by researchers to access, interpret, and reuse the data can also be an indicator of its fairness. And by making data more easily accessible and interoperable, researchers can spend less time on data preparation and more time on scientific analysis, resulting in more impactful research outcomes. The FAIR principles were developed by a group of stakeholders from academia, industry, funding agencies, and scholarly publishers who recognize the need to improve the infrastructure for reusing scholarly data. These principles were created as a guideline for individuals and organizations to enhance the reusability of their data holdings. Unlike other initiatives that focus on the human scholar side of things, the FAIR principles emphasize the importance of enhancing machines' ability to automatically find and use the data, as well as supporting its reuse by individuals. And the goal of the FAIR principles is to make data more discoverable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, thus advancing scientific research and innovation. And these principles work together to improve the overall quality and utility of research data. When thinking about how you can make your data fair, it's important to note that data can be made fair at all points of the research data lifecycle. The process of making your data fair is not linear, but more of a cycle like this Ferris wheel. You're going to be somewhere in this process. And once you've hopped on the Ferris wheel, you don't get off. And each Ferris wheel bucket represents a stage of the research study life cycle. Ideally, research groups should not wait until the very end of the study life cycle when thinking about how to make your data fair. However, it is never too late. Although it is easier to implement fair standards while planning and designing or gathering data rather than to retroactively make data fair. And as a result, the benefits of FAIR include secondary analysis and meta-analysis. And the FAIR principles work in conjunction to best serve the scientific community. All right, now that you're familiar with the FAIR principles, the next portion of this presentation is going over a roadmap that you can follow on how to make your data fair. So here is the roadmap that is based off of the NIH HEAL Initiative's roadmap for HEAL-funded investigators, but this is more broad. So this comprehensive guide is divided into 3 distinct phases that investigators undergo, from the initial study planning stage to the completion of the performance period and publication of articles. And we'll delve into each phase and explore the associated steps to ensure that you effectively apply the FAIR principles in your research. So during the pre-award phase, before obtaining an award, and throughout the study planning phase, follow these 3 steps to integrate the FAIR principles into your research. And so we'll delve into each of these steps, beginning with crafting a well-structured data management and sharing plan, which I'll call DMSP from now on. Okay, so a well-crafted DMSP leads to FAIR data, which are essential for ensuring that data can be easily discoverable, accessed, and used by others in the scientific community. A good DMSP will help ensure that your data meets these standards. The NIH requires a DMSP for all research projects, and the plan outlines how scientific data and accompanying metadata will be managed and shared. By crafting a comprehensive DMSP, you can meet these requirements and ensure that your data is well managed. The NIH encourages researchers to maximize the appropriate sharing of scientific data. This means that sharing your data and metadata in a way that is clear, organized, and accessible to others is not only beneficial, but essential for advancing scientific research. Crafting a DMSP is essential for ensuring that your data is fair and meets the requirements set forth by the NIH. By maximizing the appropriate sharing of scientific data and metadata, we can accelerate scientific progress and promote collaboration within the scientific community. Next up, when planning to manage and share research data, it's important to consider the budgetary needs. And this includes costs for data repository, curation, and support. To determine these needs, it's recommended to look at the chosen data repository's budget specifications. This information can be found on the repository's website or by contacting their support team. It's also important to review the award and future proposals to identify allowable costs for data management and sharing. This can help ensure that the budget is aligned with the grant requirements and funding limitations. And the last step during the pre-award phase is determining if your program or area of focus has specific CDEs, or common data elements. Common data elements are used typically in human studies to promote data reusability and interoperability. When determining which CDEs to use, it's important to consider the specific program or aim of the study, as certain CDEs may be more relevant to some studies than others. Using CDEs help ensure that variables can be pooled and harmonized, which facilitates data reuse. The use of CDEs can improve the efficiency and accuracy of data collection and analysis. And CDEs promote the development of semantic search, which allows researchers to search for data based on its meaning rather than specific keywords. And once you've received your award, The following steps will guide you in integrating the FAIR principles into your research. So let's explore each of these steps in detail, beginning with the preparation of metadata. So once you receive an award, one important aspect of this is preparing metadata for your data. And metadata is essentially data about your data. It's a description of the data you plan to collect, and it's built for discoverability, interpretation, and reuse. Well-curated metadata is an essential tool to organize and find connections between different data sets. It can facilitate more powerful analysis with larger data sets and allows for secondary analysis without as many limitations. Additionally, well-curated metadata enables data to be reused, which can lead to new insights. It's important that metadata is capable of being both human and machine readable, which makes things easier to find, organize, and use. And to ensure that researchers have the skills to create good metadata, there are metadata workshops available. And metadata is a critical component of the HEAL ecosystem. It helps to ensure that data is discoverable, understandable, and reusable, which ultimately leads to more impactful research. More about metadata. When preparing metadata, it's important to keep in mind that metadata curation may change over the course of the study, and that's perfectly fine. However, documenting your intentions can be useful and reduce the amount of documentation that you need to prepare later in the process. And there are many different types of metadata, but some common types include descriptive metadata, structural, administrative, preservation, and many more. And within each type, you can describe your data at a study level or a variable level. So to help visualize this, imagine a diagram where the study level metadata is at the top, representing the overarching information about the study. Below that is variable level metadata, representing the specific information about individual variables or data elements. And finally, the bottom layer are the community standards metadata, representing the standards developed and used by a particular community of practice or discipline. Generating and submitting variable level metadata is critical for enhancing the findability and reusability of data through machine readable metadata descriptors. Variable level metadata should be generated and submitted at the time of data submission to the repository rather than before. As such, for the purpose of this roadmap, the focus upon receiving the award should be on preparing study-level metadata. Oops, I forgot to skip to this slide. And this diagram is a visual representation of the metadata types that I just described. And again, there are many different types of metadata, but some common types include study-level metadata, as you see here on the screen, variable-level metadata, and community standards. Study-level metadata describes information about the study as a whole, such as the research questions, study design, and funding sources, whereas variable-level metadata describes information about individual variables or data elements. And you can see here that community standards refers to a set of metadata standards that are developed and used by a particular community of practice. And these standards are designed to promote consistency, interoperability, and reusability of data within the community. And to reiterate the point I made earlier, well-curated metadata is an essential tool to organize data and find connections between different data sets. And upon receiving an award, one of the first things to consider is which repository to deposit your data into. And your DMSP should include a well-thought-out plan for selecting an appropriate repository. When selecting a repository, there are several things to consider, including the types of data collected and whether the study is sponsored by an NIH funding or institute. or NIH Funding Institute. So to ensure that the selected repository aligns with the needs of the study, it's important to consider the following selection criteria principles. These principles include persistence, fair alignment, suitability for study data, data governance, resources and cost, and future expansion plans. It's essential to consider each of these principles carefully to ensure that the selected repository meets the requirements of the study and is suitable for the data that will be deposited. Persistence is crucial for ensuring that data is accessible over long term. Fair alignment refers to the repository's adherence to the principles that I described earlier. Suitability for study data ensures that the repository is capable of accommodating the data types collected by the study. Data governance ensures that the data is being managed ethically and legally. Resources such as cost are also important to consider when selecting a repository, as they can vary widely between different options. And finally, future expansion plans ensure that the selected repository is capable of accommodating future growth and expansion. By considering these factors and adhering to the repository selection criteria principles, you can ensure that the repository you select is the best fit for your study's data, allowing for easier access and reuse in the future. To reiterate, upon being awarded a research grant, it's essential to select an appropriate repository for your data. One initiative that can help you make this decision is the Office of Data Science Strategy, or ODSS, Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, or GREI. So the GREI mission is twofold. One is to establish a common set of cohesive and consistent capabilities, services, metrics, and social infrastructure across various generalist repositories. And two, to raise general awareness and encourage researchers to adopt FAIR principles, which in turn will promote better data sharing and reuse. Currently, GREI includes 7 established generalist repositories that work well together to establish consistent metadata, develop use cases for data sharing, train and educate researchers on FAIR data and the importance of sharing. In addition to the GRE initiative, I want to also provide examples of data ecosystems and platforms, such as the NHLBI Biodata Catalyst, the Gabriella Miller Kids First, NHGRI's Anvil, NCI Genomic Data Commons, and many more. So some of these data platforms serve as both the data repository and the platform for data sharing. Again, selecting the right repository and adhering to the FAIR principles are crucial steps in ensuring that your research data is fair. By participating in initiatives like GREI and using established data ecosystems and platforms, you can contribute to a more collaborative and effective research community. Upon award, one of the essential steps in data management and sharing is data curation. This involves creating, organizing, and maintaining data sets to ensure that they are interoperable and reusable by anyone seeking information. The process includes collecting, structuring, indexing, and cataloging data for users in an organization, group, or the general public. Institutional libraries are an excellent resource for curation support and can provide assistance to researchers in preparing their data for sharing and future use. It's essential to prioritize data curation to ensure that data can be discovered, accessed, and reused effectively. Another step upon award is to field ontology. Essentially, an ontology is a way of categorizing and defining concepts in a particular subject area. So ensuring that your vocabularies you use in your work is specific to your field, ontology, as this provides a framework for understanding the relationships between different ideas and entities and help organize data into meaningful information and knowledge. Some academic discipline or field uses ontological assumptions to frame explicit theories, research, and applications. However, some areas may lack consensus or agreement. But ontologies attempt to represent entities, ideas, and events with all their interdependent properties and relations according to a system of categories. And when it comes to sharing data, it's important to map study variables to common ontologies and controlled vocabularies where possible. This enhances harmonization and reuse of data, making it more fair. So in summary, field ontology can be a powerful tool for organizing and sharing data within a particular field of research. And by using ontologies to categorize and define concepts, we can bring order to complexity and enhance the fairness of our data. And as you conclude your study and have gathered all the data, these steps will help you incorporate the FAIR principles during the period of performance ending and beyond, including when publishing articles related to your research. So let's take a deeper look at these 2 steps. So submitting your data into a repository after the data collection phase promotes the FAIR principles for several reasons. Firstly, it increases the findability of your data, as repositories often have robust search engines and metadata standards that make it easier for others to discover and access your data. Secondly, depositing your data in a repository increases the accessibility of your data, as repositories often provide long-term storage and preservation of data. Thirdly, putting your data in a repository increases the interoperability of your data, as repositories often provide standard formats for data and metadata that allow for easier sharing and reuse. And finally, depositing your data in a repository increases the reusability of your data, as it allows for others to build upon and verify your findings, leading to more impactful and reproducible research. And as the period of performance comes to an end and you prepare to publish your findings, it's essential to use digital object identifiers, or DOIs, for any citable resources to adhere to the FAIR principles. DOIs are widely adopted in scientific publishing to cite resources, and they enable the tracking of citation counts, showcasing the value of the data beyond its original study. The URL that a DOI resolves to can be changed after publication, allowing data to be moved between repositories or stored in multiple locations without affecting the DOI's accessibility. Crossref, the organization behind DOIs, consistently publishes and archives the metadata behind all of its DOIs. And this ensures that even if a data set becomes unavailable in the future, the metadata will remain accessible, allowing researchers to track the data set down for further use. So in conclusion, utilizing DOIs for citable resources ensures the long-term accessibility, traceability, and recognition of your research data, contributing to the overall adherence to the FAIR principles and enhancing the value of your findings within the scientific community. So in summary, this comprehensive guide is organized into 3 distinct phases that researchers typically undergo, from initial study planning to the completion of the performance period and the publication of your articles. We examined each steps, providing examples and resources associated with every stage, ensuring that you effectively incorporate the FAIR principles into your research endeavors. All right. Now that you've gained an understanding to the FAIR principles and have been introduced to a roadmap that guides you in incorporating them into your research practices, our next objective is to showcase how the HEAL initiative effectively implements a FAIR data sharing ecosystem. So here is our HEAL data ecosystem. It is a distributed model of data sharing by using the HEAL platform to connect over 800 studies data from over 20 recommended repositories approved by the HEAL Initiative. In other words, the HEAL platform does not actually store data. The HEAL platform acts as a portal, aggregating information across pre-existing repositories. HEAL stewards review these repositories, ensuring that they align with the FAIR principles and are representative of various data types within the HEAL initiative. And displayed on this slide is a vertical layout of the FAIR roadmap. The rightmost column highlights HEAL-specific examples, illustrating the application of these principles within the HEAL data ecosystem. I'll begin by focusing on the pre-award phase of the roadmap. So during the pre-award phase, HEAL investigators are required to submit their DMSP to the HEAL stewards for assessment. The HEAL stewards review these plans to ensure compliance with the FAIR principles and promote proper data management practices. In addition to this, if a HEAL investigator is collecting data in one of the 9 specific core pain domains, they must utilize one of the questionnaires, variable names, and standardized codings provided by the NIH HEAL Common Data Elements team for each Common Data Elements team. So the adoption of CDEs is crucial as it guarantees data consistency, standardization, and easy comparability across studies. Employing CDEs also contributes to the development of a semantic search engine, further enhancing the discoverability and reuse of the data. So in summary, the pre-award process for HEAL investigators involves submitting their DMSP to HEAL stewards for review and following certain guidelines, including the use of CDEs when collecting data in specific core pain domains. By following these guidelines, HEAL investigators are contributing to the overall goal of the HEAL initiative, which is to advance the understanding of pain mechanisms and accelerate the development of effective therapies. Upon receiving their award, HEAL investigators must adhere to specific guidelines for data management and sharing, and the HEAL platform serves as a hub for investigators to find HEAL studies, which is why HEAL investigators must register their studies with the platform. This registration enables researchers to share data, find collaborators, and receive credit for their work. In addition, registering studies on the HEAL data platform increases the visibility of the study and allows for data reuse. At this stage, investigators are highly encouraged to identify a repository that is the best fit for their data type. The HEAL initiative provides a schema template, the HEAL standard level metadata schema template, for standardized reporting of study level metadata. This schema template guarantees that study level metadata is reported uniformly across all the HEAL funded research. Additionally, the HEAL initiative has approved specific repositories where data can be stored and shared with other researchers. And so after collecting and managing data, the next step is to submit the data and metadata into a repository. The HEAL initiative requires investigators to deposit their data in an approved repository for safekeeping and sharing with other researchers. This helps ensure that the data is properly stored and maintained and makes it more discoverable and reusable for future research. It's important to ensure that data is accompanied by complete metadata documentation, which describes the data collection and processing steps and any other relevant information needed to interpret the data. This documentation can be crucial for other researchers who wish to use the data. And the HEAL initiative is currently working on developing a HEAL variable level metadata submission process. And we encourage investigators to follow a variable level metadata schema template that is available in our GitHub. This template further ensures that data is reported uniformly, making it more discoverable and reusable. HEAL investigators are also required to report their research publications to the HEAL initiative. This includes any publications, presentations, or other outputs that result from HEAL-funded research. By reporting publications, investigators can help the HEAL Initiative track the impact of its investments and demonstrate the value of its research portfolio to stakeholders. Additionally, reporting publications can help raise the visibility of research results and increase opportunities for collaboration with other researchers. Overall, submitting data and metadata to a repository and reporting HEAL publications are important steps in the research process for HEAL investigators. These actions help ensure that the data is properly stored and maintained, and that the research results are disseminated and utilized by the wider research community. So this is the HEAL data ecosystem again. As a recap, the HEAL data ecosystem is distributed across over 20 HEAL compliant repositories, which have been reviewed by HEAL stewards to ensure that they align with the HEAL principles. It didn't make sense to have one centralized repositories because of the varying data types available, and so why reinvent the wheel when there are already well-established repositories available? And so the HEAL platform can be viewed as a powerful means of putting the FAIR principles into practice, thereby not only benefiting the scientific community, but also having a positive impact on our society as a whole. And as I wrap up this presentation, I feel it's essential to include a call to action for all of you. If you are a HEAL-funded investigator, please remember to register your study on the HEAL data platform. Additionally, we are seeking data dictionary submissions from HEAL investigators. And so if you have any questions or would like to chat with me about this process, I'd be happy to touch base with you. Just come find me around. I'll be here all day today and tomorrow. And this next action item can apply to both HEAL and non-HEAL investigators. Wherever you are in your research process, take a look at the roadmap and ask yourself, am I ensuring that my research approach and data management plans are fair? We've heard earlier today about the complexities of researching pain and pain management, primarily due to its multifaceted nature. This complexity only underscores the urgent need for collaboration and data sharing. By implementing the FAIR principles in our research, we can collectively break new ground in our understanding of pain and crucially contribute to solving the opioid crisis. Let's empower our scientific community and beyond with the tools and practices that enhance data usability and accessibility, ultimately accelerating our journey towards effective solutions. So this concludes my presentation on the FAIR principles. It is my hope that you can now better appreciate the importance of purposefully translating discoveries into practical solutions guided by the FAIR principles. With that said, I initially had the Q&A portion, but I am running out of time, so I'd be happy to touch base with anyone that has any questions afterwards. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you all for listening.